Hey everyone, so today I'm going to reveal the new double grass line I've been using for the past week. So if you've enjoyed using my previous double grass line, you'll probably like this as well. Ever since the leaderboards were announced for this season, I've been on the first page of the leaderboards throughout the whole time, and a huge factor of that was because I was using this line. So the line I've been using is Alolan, Marowak, Shiftry, and Ferrothorn. But I really want to emphasize that you need to use the right movesets for this strategy to work out well. I'll talk more about why these movesets are important throughout the matches, but specifically for Shiftry, you definitely want Snarl. I made a whole video discussing the benefits of Snarl over Bullet Seed, so I'll link that down below. And if you know about my previous double grass line, people always talk about how it's super weak to Shadow Mawile or Mawile in general, and that is true, but this team's hard counter Shadow Mawile, so let's start off there. Okay, so Shadow Mawile, a lot of people always talk about how this is a huge problem for my previous double grass team. This is, I've only seen 3 Shadow Mawiles this entire season. I kind of wish I saw more, especially with this line, but especially with the Alolan Marowak and the Fire Spins, it's going to pretty much just, wall off Shadow Mawile completely. There's really not much Shadow Mawile can do unless they're using Bite or something. But they're going to come in right here, and this is not a problem. I could just pretty much farm down this Mawile. I am going to drop actually a Bone Club to make this just an easier farm down the road. And then knowing that I could get pretty close to my Shadow Ball, and I'm going to drop the Shadow Ball right here, and I still have the Ferrothorn in the back, and that's going to do really well against this Ludicolo. I'm actually going to stay in this matchup and then just drop another Shadow Ball, and that way hopefully force another shield, and then I can go straight Power Whip here. I'm going to quit the match right there. So this is a situation where Shadow Mawile is actually in the back. So I'm losing the lead here, and even if they have a Shadow Mawile in the back, they can lock onto your grass, right? I actually make a mistake right here. I went with Foul Play instead of Leaf Blade because for some reason I forgot that was resisted too. But either way, it's not a big deal because this actually gives me a little bit more farm to farm with my Alolan Marowak. And the good thing here is that you pretty much need to land 2 Power Whips to take out Azumarill. So I'm just going to go straight Shadow Ball right here because this will mean that I only need 1 Power Whip down the road. I'm just going to stay in here, and then I was hoping to potentially catch like Hydro Pump, but that didn't end up working out. That's fine too, and then I'm going to drop Power Whips here. This Hypno, if it's running Fire Punch, can be a problem. I have no idea what it is at the moment though, so I am going to invest in shields. And so let's see what this player drops. This is actually Jonkis, one of the top rated players for I think last season definitely, and this season as well, maybe in prior seasons too. So definitely a solid player. So I'm going for a quick swap right here, noticing that they probably are running Shadow Ball instead. So they go for another Thunder Punch, probably hoping to farm up a little bit of energy, and I just go straight Shadow Ball right here, take it out. This Azumarill going to get 1 bubble of energy, but I still have a shield left, and then I just need to get 1 power and I can take him out. So Shadow Mawile, even in the back, not a problem at all. I've only seen 3 of these out of 250 matches this season, so I would love to run into more of them, to be honest, with this line. Alright, Azumarill lead, very common lead that you'll see in GBO. So they are staying in here and throwing an Ice Beam. You do have to shield this Ice Beam, and they did a great swap into Alolan Marowak. So something to really watch out for is they might swap on you right after dropping the Ice Beam and catching a Leaf Blade. So that, unfortunately, I wasted some energy there, but I think they might have thought I was going for another bait, and or just a Leaf Blade bait, and it didn't end up working out. And then now I am able to kind of flip that switch advantage over to my side, and then just drop a ton of Leaf Blades against the Sableye. And so this kind of makes sense that they didn't swap right away to any of their other Pokemon, because Shiftry kind of counters all of them, or has play against all of them, I guess is a better way to say it. So I am going to just tank this Foul Play right here, and I'm going to bring in my Alolan Marowak, mainly because I wanted to save the Ferrothorn for my for this Azumarill in the back. But Ferrothorn acts a lot similar to Meganium, and my opponent's going to quit right there, because you could tank that Ice Beam. And so having a Grass Pokemon that can tank an Ice Beam comfortably is really good, especially when they safe swap into Azumarill. Okay, so something that people might ask is, what about Shadow Shiftry? So I do use Shadow Shiftry in a few of these matches. However, after trying it for a bit, I end up just not really liking it. I like the bulk of the regular one more, and you have a much harder matchup against like Meganiums as well, especially with shields up if you're using Shadow Shiftry. So I ended up going with a normal one for most of my matches, but some of these were when I was testing it out. So I'm going to lose switch advantage right here, and then they actually swap into their Azumarill. And so this puts me in a good spot with Ferrothorn. However, now that they've pivoted, I'm kind of still in a tough spot. Fortunately, they are actually running Play Rough and Hydro Pump, so I'm going to farm up a little bit more energy so that I have something potentially I could drop onto the Skarmory. And so my big fear is what is really in the back here. Luckily, I know it can't be a Azumarill, so my Marowak still might have some play with 2 shields. And so luckily, it's actually going to be a Mew. However, they did a great swap to Skarmory to catch that charge move. But with 2 shields, I should be okay here. I'm just going to drop 2 Power Whips to take out this Mew, and should be fine. I actually have no idea what moves they're running, but with 2 shields left, it's not a problem at all. So yeah, so losing lead, not the end of the world. Going against the original double grass line, so ran into this a few times, and it's a little bit tough of a matchup when they bring in the Shiftry. So Shiftry is really the biggest threat. So what I'm gonna do right here is swap to my own Shiftry to catch this charge move, and at this point, they're gonna have to invest some shields to keep their Shiftry alive. Or I could come back in with my Alolan Marowak and fire spin them down. So I'm going to take this. They're low enough that they're going to need to shield the next Leaf Blade. And they're going to drop this one. I'm going to let it go. And then now I can just fire spin down their Shiftry and store up a bunch of energy. So now I have almost 2 Shadow Balls worth of energy. They're probably going to come in with Skarmory, which is a good situation for me to be in, because now I have my Ferrothorn that could take out the Meganium. And so they're going to... I don't know if they're going to let this go or not. They actually end up letting it go. And then probably not the best play, to be honest. If I was the Skarmory user, I would probably shield that, just because unfortunately Meganium has not a lot of plays against a little Marowak. And go straight for the Shadow Ball. So yeah, so if you run to the old double grass line, you're usually going to beat it. I've only lost once to one player named Ready to Lose, and he actually played it really well, and I had a little misplay too, but very impressive on his end to do that. Alright, so this is kind of a line I've seen a little bit of. It's Skarmory with Shiftry and Azumarill, so it's kind of similar to the double grass line, except the original double grass line, except with Azumarill in the back, which I personally think is a little bit weaker of a line, just because you might run into the traditional double grass line. But yeah, so I'm going to swap into my Shiftry right here, and essentially what I'm doing right here is bringing in my Shiftry so that they swap out their Azumarill, and I can line up my Ferrothorn against their Azumarill down the road. So as you can see, they brought in their Shiftry, and I'm going to tank this just because even though Shadow, I know that I can survive it, and I'm going to throw another Leaf Blade right here. Unfortunately, I couldn't get to it, but that's fine, because now I can just farm down this Shiftry. I'm going to throw a Bone Club just to potentially force out a shield or make this farm down faster. And they go for a swap, and now I'm just going to bring in my Ferrothorn with a shield advantage as well. This is going to be a pretty easy match. And then take it out right there. I have actually made the mistake once of going against Skarmory, Shiftry, Azumarill line, and I thought they had a Meganium in the back instead of Azumarill, and I purposely lost switch advantage to farm down with my Alolan Marowak instead of winning switch advantage when I could have. And then I paid the price when I saw the Azumarill later down the road and matched up with my Alolan Marowak. So it's definitely something to be a little careful about when you face Skarmory with Shiftry safe swaps. Alright, going against FP6, a great content creator, a great battler. Going against him with a Galarian Stunfisk lead. So obviously a lead that you end up losing. So I'm just going to let this go just because no point in investing shields because they could just match my shields and still win. So I'm going to go for a very aggressive farm down right here. And if they counter you throughout the entire way of a match, unfortunately you can't really do too much about it. So I'm going to go for the Shadow Ball, a little bit harder hitting move. He does go for the shield, and now I'm going to bring in my Ferrothorn. Unfortunately, he does have a Deoxys Defense in the back. If it was a Azumarill in the back, I might be in a better spot. But unfortunately it's Deoxys Defense, so he could pretty much just counter me down. And he'll probably have to drop a charge move here. But yeah, it's still unfortunately in a bad situation. If I could have dropped a Power Whip, I might have been in a little better spot. But at this point, he has charge moves ready, and he still has a shield too, so there's no way I can take this out. So yeah, this is just an example of what would happen if they just have everything lined up against the team. Then unfortunately you can't do too much about it. But this is one possible scenario. The reason why I built this team was because I'm seeing way less Altarias, and so this team is very weak to Altaria, but because you're seeing less of that, more Skarmorys, and also you're seeing less Registeels and more Galarian Stunfisk and Bastiodons, the grass in the back is much more able to handle those 2 steel type Pokemons. Because Ferrothorn's terrible against Registeel and Shiftry's only okay against it. Alright, so my opponent right here, they don't swap out the Stunfisk, and so this is making me think that they're really weak to Shiftry in the back. So that's why I'm deciding to match their shields as well, because I know they can get this Leaf Blade before they get to another Rock Slide, and then I'll have an energy advantage still. So anytime people don't swap out in these kind of situations, you're probably in a good spot, especially Shiftry against Galarian Stunfisk, because you're going to have a really good energy advantage. And then I think I swap out to Ferrothorn right here. Yeah, and so the reason why I swap out the Ferrothorn right here is because, you know, Azumarill is really bad against Shiftry, and so if they're bringing in Azumarill as their next Pokemon, that they must have something even weaker to Azumarill in the back, and so it ends up being Meganium, and so that's fine, because now unfortunately I couldn't get to the Flash Cannon, but I could just farm down with this Alolan Marowak. I know I can survive an Earthquake as well, and then I'll have a Shadow Ball ready for the Azumarill, and then I could also potentially finish off with the Shiftry if I can't finish off the Shadow Ball, but fortunately I do. Against J fans, and great battler from Canada. So this, if you run into a Tropius lead, you're usually in a pretty good spot, because you are able to win switch advantage, and as long as they have a grass in the back, a water in the back, you're going to have a good time, especially if it's a Azumarill. I'm not even going to try to farm extra, because I know that this Tropius is going to struggle a little bit against the Ferrothorn as well, and I could potentially force a shield with Flash Cannon, or they have to drop all their energy. So I'm going to just let them drop this energy, and it is going to be an aerial ace, but because of that steel subtyping with Ferrothorn, you're only going to take neutral, and then you're going to drop the Flash Cannon right there. And then now I'm going to have an even better time farming this Tropius down. No need to really shield this. And then between Shiftry and Alolan Marowak, you have really good coverage for pretty much most things that's a threat to this team. At this point, I realized I was going to be in a very solid position to kind of win. So this is kind of a very common line you might see in Go Battle League Season 3, Tropius with Galarian Stunfisk and Azumarill. I think the other very popular line is also Tropius with Galarian Stunfisk and Deoxys Defense, which is a little bit better against this team, but I am going to go quickly for a swap with the Shadow Ball because I realized that they shielded. They actually brought in their Tropius, so that's actually a great play by him. And then, but fortunately, I was able to survive the Rock Slide and still land the Bone Club. And even if I didn't, I still have the Shiftry in the back. All right. Okay, so Hypno lead is kind of an interesting one. So any backline Umbreons is very tough. Umbreon in the front, it's pretty much near impossible to win. I've never beaten it. I think maybe some of my patrons have told me that they've beaten it, but it's been really hard for me. But Hypno in the lead is usually a pretty good spot for a little Marowak to be in. And then once they bring in Umbreon, you want to counter switch with Shiftry. And so Shiftry as a counter swap to it is okay because you're going to resist the Snarls, and then they have to go for the last resource to take you out, but you potentially could get baited from the foul plays. So I go quickly for a swap to Ferrothorn because at this point I know that they're only one fast move away, and then Ferrothorn has a solid matchup against Hypno, and I figure that's probably what they're going to bring in. And then Shiftry can still take out any waters in the back. And like I said before, Shiftry with Alolan Marowak is a very good complementary pair. So that's a big reason why I think that keeping those two alive is not a bad spot to be in. So I'm going to just tank whatever this is. Ends up being a Thunder Punch. I'm realizing I figured that they weren't running Shadow Ball because otherwise they wouldn't have swapped out so quickly. Something you definitely have to kind of gauge and read based off of what your opponents are doing. And then go ahead and land the Shadow Ball. And then let's see what they have in the back. It's going to be an Azu, and so Azu. And then I guess they're going for a Sack Swap right there. Unfortunately, wasn't able to get it to go through. I'm going to land, I just need to land 2 Leaf Blades here, and then I should be fine. And I'm pretty much, I think, 3 Snarls away from the second Leaf Blade after this one, and then that'll be enough to take out the Azu. Yeah, and so that's pretty much how you play Hypnos. So Hypnos are kind of if they don't swap out right away, I actually swap out myself. And the main reason behind this is because you don't want them to have a Hypno in the front and then have a counter for your grass in the back. I'm going for a bait right here, and luckily my opponent Lemon Lime was going to shield it. And then I shield the Thunder Punch, even though I know it probably isn't a Shadow Ball, because, you know, Shadow Hypnos hit so hard. You still probably need to shield it, otherwise it can confusion you down. And so he actually has a Scrafty in the back, which is a hard counter to the entire back line I have. So that's why you really want to swap out if they stay in too long, because they might be thinking, okay, well, once they take this out, then they can sweep you in the back, which is definitely true with Scrafty. So I am going to let this go because I did quite a bit of damage already with Shiftry. And then now I could potentially just Bullet Seed down. And I know that the Hypno is low on health, and then it just depends on a lot on what they have in the back. So I am going to shield this because that Shadow Ball is going to hit hard. And so surprisingly, he's actually running Shadow Ball as well on top of the Shadow Hypno. So, and then he has Azumarill in the back. I just need to land 2 Power Whips, and then I can take it out. So yeah, so usually if the Scrafty has a lot of health still on it, like if it shields 1 Leaf Blade, then you definitely want to shield your own Alolan Marowak, but the only reason why I didn't is because I knew that I could Bullet Seed it down. Alright, so Scrafty in the lead, a tough spot to be in, but the big thing is as long as you're shielding the foul plays, you're going to be in a good spot. After this match though, or more recently, I've been letting the first move go because you can survive 1 foul play, but if they bait you with a Power Punch in the lead, then you're going to be in a tough spot later. So I am going to go straight for Bone Clubs, but if you do land a Shadow Ball, I think it's a little bit more energy efficient. So I do end up committing both shields here, and even if they shield this, I can still Fire Spin them down, but they do decide to just yeah, just let that go. And then I'm going to bring in my Shiftry. Luckily I was able to land this, and then they go for a shield. Good way to just whittle down some shields right there, and then I could bring in the Ferrothorn. They're actually running Play Rough, so that's even better news for my Ferrothorn. I'm going to wait out the switch timer though because I'm way behind on them. And then they have a Shadow Hypno, so this can definitely be a tough matchup if they're running Shadow Ball. So what I'm going to do right here is, knowing that my switch timer is coming up soon, I'm going to swap quickly to my own Alolan Marowak. And then let's see what move they have. They do throw a Shadow Ball, so that wastes all of their energy, which is pretty good. And then I'm going to throw the Power Whip right away, and then take out their Hypno. Yeah, so Scrafty in the lead can be a tough matchup, so you really just need to stay in with your Alolan Marowak and just try to muscle through with it. Because you really just can't risk that Scrafty matching up with either Shiftry or nor Ferrothorn. Yeah, and again, Play Rough. I'm not an Azu user myself, but I highly recommend running Ice Beam. You know, Hydro Pump and Play Rough are kind of subjective on what you want to use it for, but I think without Ice Beam, you're in a really tough spot against a lot of matchups. Okay, so Obstagoon, also a very tough Pokemon, kind of similar to Scrafty in the sense that you don't want it to be matched up at all against your backline. And so I'm going to just throw the Bone Clubs right here. In this situation, you don't want to throw Shadow Ball because it's going to be super resisted. So you really just have to throw a Bone Club, even though it's such a bad move. I don't shield the first Night Slash because I was worried that if they get a boost on the first one, after the first Night Slash, then the next 2 Night Slashes are going to hurt way more. You could tank 1 though, so I'd rather tank the first one before there's any boosts. Alright. Not a great spot to be in, but I do get some extra farm on this Obstagoon, and then I believe I'm going to switch to Shiftry, mainly because I could survive an Earthquake and a Flash Cannon, and a Frenzy Plant, but unfortunately they have a Skarmory in the back as well, and so Skarmory is going to check both of my Ferrothorn and my Shiftry. And so some people might ask, like, why not run Thunder on Ferrothorn? But the big issue is you end up losing to Meganium pretty hard without Flash Cannon, and so that's the big reason why I run Flash Cannon instead. And also you kind of want Flash Cannon for some matchups like Altaria and stuff. It ends up hitting a little bit harder too, and that's definitely a weakness on this team. So, all right, going against Rebecca, which is a great, she's a great battler, also in the top of the leaderboards. So she ended up going in with Toxicroak, and then this is the first matchup we've played against each other with. I played multiple matchups with her, and fortunately this line actually does really well against the Toxicroak lead, and I believe I shield this, and so anytime they're charging for a ton of time, you do want to shield it just in case of Focus Blast. It ends up being a Focus Blast, so that would have completely messed up this whole match if I didn't shield it. But now I have a huge energy advantage, and then I could just drop Foul Plays. And so fortunately, it's actually a Registeel in the back too, so my Alolan Marowak has a ton of play against the entire rest of her lineup. Registeel definitely less seen these days, but I think there's still a lot of utility there. And then I am going to bring in the Alolan Marowak and then just go for Bone Club. She does have the shield, and then I'm going to shield this Mud Bomb and then go straight for another Bone Club. Even if I have to match Ferrothorn with Registeel later, it needs to land more than just one Focus Blast to get out. Fortunately, I don't even need to use Ferrothorn for that match, so GG's right there. Alright, the famous Shadow Victreebel, Deoxys Defense, and Bastiodon line. So traditionally, or usually speaking, I don't really lose this line. I only lost once to my friend Airvel, who was using this line, but he played really well, and I kind of had some misplays. But usually this is not a line you would ever lose against, and so I quickly swap in my Ferrothorn right here, and the main reason is because I know that I'd rather get energy on this Ferrothorn because this Bastiodon needs to land a Flamethrower to take me out anyway, so it doesn't really matter if I take some extra counter damage. That Flamethrower is going to take me out in one shot at this range, so might as well get some extra farm on the Deoxys Defense. But essentially, to take out Bastiodon, you kind of need to tag team it with everything else on your team. But the Victreebel has very little play against my entire line because you're going against two grass users that are going to resist, I guess, the Shadow variant Shiftry match. But you have two grasses going to resist your Razor Leaf damage, and then you also have a little Marowak that could just straight farm down. So I'm going to just let this go. Usually it's Acid Spray or Leaf Blade, and so I know I can survive both of those moves. And then I have energy for Bone Club and Shadow Ball. I do go for Shadow Ball because Shadow Ball does a little more damage if you go and get one of those moves off and get rid of the last shield. And now I just land a Leaf Blade and take him out. Still shield left. Alright, another popular line with Bastiodon Razor Leafers is Bastiodon with double Razor Leafers. Shadow Razor Leafers, actually. So, yeah, kind of cool that they have a... That's a Shadow? Oh, no, that's not a Shadow, but it is another Razor Leafer, though. That's a cool little shiny one. But yeah, even against this line, this team has a lot of play because your Shiftry is going to force them to shield, and then they can do nothing against a little Marowak. So a little Marowak, I'm just going to go and straight farm down. Having Bone Clubs or Shadow Ball ready for the Bastiodon is going to put me in a really good spot. And then I could just 2-to-1 shield Ferrothorn against the Bastiodon and Victreebel. This is kind of a slight misplay by me, actually, by dropping the Shadow Ball. Bone Club would definitely be better if I could get to more than one down the road, and I expect that I probably could get to another one after this match. But I guess in this situation, as long as I double shield here, I should be able to take out the Bastiodon anyway without even needing my Alolan Marowak again. So yeah, so as you can see, that Shadow Victreebel in the back had no play against this team. So if this is the team that you don't like going against, or the last team, this team is for you. I love actually running into these teams because this team does really well against them. Alright, Umbreon lead. Man, Umbreon lead is tough. So I do go for the Flash Cannon, and usually against Umbreon leads, I actually swap in Ferrothorn instead of Shiftry. So traditionally you do safe swap Shiftry, but because Shiftry has a better matchup against Umbreon than Ferrothorn does, or I think it does, at least, so I end up saving it for later. So I'm going to throw this Bone Club because I really don't want this Toxicroak to be in a situation where they can match up against my Shiftry. I actually let this Mud Bomb go because I know that I could pretty much snarl down from here and get a slight energy advantage against Umbreon. So the fact that they brought in Umbreon means that they're pretty weak to grass. Unfortunately, they baited me with a foul play. I think if I didn't fall for that bait, this match would be a little bit closer. But I'm going to let this move go because, I don't know, if it's a water in the back like a Azumarill, I do need to save one shield for Ice Beam. So my opponent's just going to keep tanking these Leaf Blades, and then I'm expecting probably a Azumarill in the back at this point, and let's see what it is. I'm going to shield and just build up a punch of energy by snarling. Unfortunately, it's another foul play, so I end up shielding two foul plays instead of Last Resource, which is kind of unfortunate. But it's a Azumarill, and unfortunately, I am not able to flip this matchup, but this is probably one of the closest matchups I've had against Umbreon. Umbreon lead in general is just really tough for this lineup. But yeah, alright, so going against my friend Alpha Phoebe right here. So he actually has a Rainy Castform. Rainy Castform is actually really solid. Very good actually against Alolan Marowak. So he actually counter switched Galarian Stunfisk. So at this point I know I needed win switch advantage, and Shiftry can win switch advantage, especially if they're counter switching you. Even if you're counter switching the Galarian Stunfisk, you can usually win that too, as long as you're fast enough. But because of this, I'm realizing that he probably is really weak to Shiftry in the back, which means that he's probably also weak to Ferrothorn. So let's see what my opponent brings in. So it's going to be a Hypno. Yeah, it's a Hypno. Not going to be great against Shiftry, but obviously he's going to bring in the Rainy Castform either. And then I'm going to just keep landing these Leaf Blades. And he's going to draw. I'm going to draw a shield right there. And then I'm going to bring in my Alolan Marowak. Anticipating a switch, I'm just going to let this go. Even if it's a Shadow Ball, I'm not too worried. Fortunately, it's actually just a Thunder Punch. And at this point, I'm really not going to shield because I could just Bolt Seed down. And I do go for a swap right there. And he swaps in his Rainy Castform and concedes the match. Alright, so what happens if they actually have counters lined up for you all the way through? So Skarmory, this is not good because now I know I can't win switch advantage very easily. However, this is why Shiftry is such a good safe swap with these double grass lines. They need a shield. So as you can see, my opponent actually did not shield here. This means I could snarl down now and completely flip the match, the outcome of the match completely. All right, so now I'm going to drop Leaf Blade right here, and then they are going to shield, and then on even shields against Alolan Marowak, Deoxys Defense is going to lose. And now, had I not won that switch advantage, I would have lost because that Deoxys Defense would be able to beat my Ferrothorn. But now I'm in a spot where I can actually take out this Rainy Castform, my Ferrothorn, and still do a ton of damage on this Deoxys Defense and still have my Alolan Marowak in the back. So this is a big reason why, one, you want to use Shiftry in a lot of situations as a safe swap, and two, you want to run Snarl. If you're running Bolt Seed, you can't actually win that matchup against Skarmory, even if they let the 2 foul plays go. And if you're someone that doesn't run this line, but you run into this line, you need to shield. You need to shield that second foul play, otherwise you could potentially lose. Especially Skarmory. I think Altaria might be a little bit different. Yeah, I need to sim that matchup, but especially Skarmory, you're going to need a shield, because if you don't shield, then that can happen and you end up losing a match that you could have easily won if you just maintain switch advantage. All right, Melmetal, kind of a tougher matchup against Alolan Marowak than some of the other, than like Registeel, because these rock slides are definitely going to hurt. You could tank one. My opponent actually goes for a quick swap to Umbreon, so backline Umbreon's very hard, and so I end up letting this last resort go. I don't really want to burn my last shield right away, but because they're swapping it in, I could, even if I lose this matchup, I can still bring my Ferrothorn instead. So I'm not as concerned, and I should be able to get to another Leaf Blade. I believe I do shield this last resort because now I can put a ton of pressure onto this Umbreon, and even if they don't shield, they bring in Melmetal, and even Melmetal doesn't like to kind of eat these foul plays. Alright, so my opponent actually brings in Deoxys Defense. So in this situation, I'm actually going to bring in probably Ferrothorn, mainly because Ferrothorn doesn't have as great of a matchup against Melmetal. And the thing with Deoxys Defense is that its charge moves don't really do much against Ferrothorn, so I don't really mind if running into Deoxys Defense with energy. And then I'm going to just go straight Fire Spin down on this Deoxys Defense. They're going to shield the first bait, and then unfortunately I can't get to Shadow Ball, but like I said, these charge moves aren't going to do too much, and so with shields down, as long as you're landing these Power Whips, you can potentially beat Deoxys Defense, and they actually debuffed themselves there, so now I'm going to really be fine at this moment. As you can see, Thunderbolt's not going to be enough, and I get to another Power Whip and take out Deoxys Defense. So yeah, so against Melmetal, you definitely want to stay in and see what happens. Going against my friend Simply Moxie, great battler from Canada. So usually Registeel leads, very easy match. But this one, I purposely chose a match which was kind of harder because just to see kind of how to play that out. So yeah, so my opponent actually ended up staying in this match for a second, and then he brings in Shiftry, and then I quickly go and try to catch a foul play. Unfortunately, it's going to be a Leaf Blade, but that's fine too. I am going to burn some of that energy on the Shiftry by catching that, and then I'm going to throw another Leaf Blade. I'm going to let this go because I know I still could survive until the next Leaf Blade, and that's when I really had to decide whether I want to shield or not. And then I am going to I guess I let it go. Yeah, because my opponent's down 0 shield to 2 now, so puts me in a very good spot. Ferrothorn doesn't like taking these foul plays, but they're within 1 Power Whip away, and does a great swap into Registeel right here to absorb that damage. And then now I'm going to just go straight fast move down. I am probably end up going to have to shield this because yeah, because it's going to do quite a bit of damage to me, and I have a lot of energy that I want to spend. He actually has a Skarmory in the back, so that's why I decided to bring this match, because Skarmory in the back is not usually something you see with Registeel, so it definitely makes this matchup a little bit harder, but there's still a lot of play as long as you play it right. And then I'm just going to go straight fast move down here and take him out. So good games to him. Usually, you know, matches aren't that close with Registeel in the lead, but with the right opponent, they can make it very tough for you. Alright, Deoxys Defense. So this is a tough one. So fortunately, this one's running Thunderbolt. So after I realized that, I'm not swapping out. But usually I actually do swap out here. And they actually don't shield the first Shadow Ball too. So that puts me in a very good spot. But I almost always go for the Shadow Ball right away. And then as you can see, they brought in the Umbreon. I want to match the Umbreon with my Shiftry, so I bring in the Ferrothorn instead. This is going to do a ton of damage to the Toxicroak. And then able to actually take out the Toxicroak too. I think they were just trying to counter me down. Or maybe they didn't have enough energy yet. But no, I think they probably did have a Mud Bomb. That might have been misplay, or they just want an extra farm on their Umbreon for our next Pokemon. But yeah, so now I'm in a good spot because it's still going to be an uphill battle because Umbreon's very bulky. But I do need to just keep landing these Leaf Blades, and I did shield the last resort with my last shield, so that does put me in a better spot instead of them baiting me with the foul play. But at this point, I know that I probably can't take out the Umbreon with just Shiftry, and then so I'm going to have to use my Alolan Marowak, and before they could get to another foul play. Fortunately, I do have energy on this, and I'm going to go straight for Shadow Ball. I believe Shadow Ball is a little bit more energy efficient than Bone Club. Bone Club is just such a bad move, even though Shadow Ball is resisted. Alright, so when Deoxys Defense stayed too long into Alolan Marowak, I actually end up swapping out. And so in this situation, they actually overfarm a bit. So I'm going to throw the Shadow Ball and just catch their charge move instead. The main reason is because if they have a flyer in the back, you need to save that Alolan Marowak, especially if it's Skarmory. And so yeah, so it is a Skarmory. So now that I realize that, that's a good reason why I end up still saving my Alolan Marowak. I am going to let this first guy attack go through, and then I'm going to probably just go straight for the Shadow Ball. I could probably farm up 1 or 2 more Fire Spins. And then go for the Shadow Ball, and this way it'll make it a little bit easier against the Deoxys Defense down the road. Ends up being Azumarill in the back. Even though I don't have switch advantage here, I have a great matchup, and I am going to shield the Ice Beam right here because, like I said before, all of the Deoxys Defense's charge moves don't really do much, so you really just have to worry about the counters. So it makes more sense to shield the Ice Beam. And then I farmed up a little extra just because I wasn't anticipating them swapping out, and so now I just need to land 2 Power Whips and I can take out this Azumarill. And even if I don't take out the Azumarill, I still have Alolan Marowak in the back with probably halfway to Shadow Ball, so I was going to take it out still from there. But yeah, so Deoxys Defense leads are definitely, you kind of have to play it by ear. If they're staying in the matchup, you eventually want to swap out. And I usually swap out after dropping a Shadow Ball because you do a little better against Deoxys Defense with Shiftry if they have a shield down. Okay, Altaria, this team is very weak to. Unfortunately, my previous double grass line is much better against it with the Skarmory lead. Does much better against Altaria than anything else on this team. So I actually usually bring in Ferrothorn to hopefully absorb Sky Attack. Unfortunately, my opponent didn't fall for that. So they brought in Shadow Machamp, hard counter to Ferrothorn. However, they need to shield everything. So now I was able to burn both of the shields, and then I have my Alolan Marowak still. And the big thing is I don't want to take a Rock Slide, so I need to call their bait. So I'm just going for it, just hoping that it's Cross Chop. It is Cross Chop. And then they go, and I'm like, I need to call another bait. So I'm just going to hope that it's another Cross Chop. It is another Cross Chop. I could just Fire Spin down. Now I have a Shadow Ball ready, and I still have my Shiftry in the back. And so I'm going to bring the Shiftry, and I do have to shield the Sky Attack, but at this point, I'm just hoping that's something weak. And luckily, it is actually a Ferrothorn. So Ferrothorn doesn't do great against Shiftry because the foul play just hurt a lot, and then with the nerf to Flash Cannon, it's going to just take way longer to get to, and you end up winning that much easier. I could tank a Flash Cannon if this is one, but fortunately it's actually just a Power Whip, so maybe they're running Thunder with it, I don't know, but so I was able to win that Altaria matchup, even though Altaria beats pretty much everything on the team, and there's still some play. Which is why I really like this team, because there's not a lot of things that really hard counter it, besides maybe Umbreon leads. Alright, so this opponent actually throws a Sky Attack right away, and I am going to drop a Shadow Ball and then just swap straight away to my Ferrothorn. And then they end up bringing a Registeel, hard counter to Ferrothorn, so I'm in trouble for sure. And that Altaria has energy. So yeah, I just need to throw these Power Whips. It's a little more energy efficient than Flash Cannon, so I'm just gonna let this Focus Blast go, and then they probably could farm me at this point. Oh no, fortunately they couldn't, so that's okay. And then I'm going to just drop Bone Club, because I don't think I can get to Shadow Ball in time, and then they do get to another Charge. I'm just gonna let this go. At this point I know they can't get to a Flash Cannon very easily, so I'm gonna just snarl down with Shiftry, just build all this energy, and then fortunately it's actually a Azumarill on the back. So I kind of see a slight win condition here. It's still a very uphill battle because they still have that Altaria in the back. They still have Azumarill with half health that could probably land an Ice Beam. And then I think they just farmed a little too much right here, or just it took them a little too long to get to that Ice Beam. So I'm going to shield here. I force a double shield on this Azumarill. And then now I could just get to another Leaf Blade. Farmed up a little extra, so you want to make sure you're counting the bubbles so you get as much energy as you can, because those bubbles are going to be resisted. And then I'm going to shield this Sky Attack, so now I know that they can't get to another one very quickly, so I'm going to drop a Foul Play, and then now I know I have a Leaf Blade for this Registeel. Man, that was a very tough matchup, but like I said, you still have play against Altaria leads. Obviously, I've definitely lost to some other Altaria leads that has straight counters to my team, but sometimes there are definitely plays against it. So Double Flyer team is very rough for this team, just like the original Double Grass line. Yeah, it's just a tough matchup to go against. So my opponent correctly decides to shield right there, and then they go straight farm down. So this puts me in a tough spot because they're probably going to hit me with 2 Sky Attacks. So I'm going to let the first one go through. Even if this is Brave Bird, I can still survive it. And I'm just going to go straight, try to farm down, because I really can't risk using shield right now. Because I don't know what they have in the back at the moment yet, but I know that I need to just have a shield advantage. And unfortunately, it is Altaria, so this double Flyer is going to be, yeah, kind of tough. With the nerf to Flash Cannon, it unfortunately makes this matchup against Altaria even harder. Before the nerf, I think it was a little bit better. I personally never had a Ferrothorn until after the nerf, so I never got to play it out myself. So I kind of make a mistake right here. I wasn't even thinking about going for Sack Swap. What I thought was I had a Shadow Ball ready for this Altaria. Unfortunately, I was a little bit too short, so maybe I could have waited a little bit longer to Sack Swap it. But yeah, even then, with the Whiscash, it probably could drop a Mud Bomb and bring it pretty close. So yeah, so Double Flyer, I haven't beaten it before. That was my only one I actually ran into, but I think if you do run to Double Flyer, you're probably going to lose. Alright, Mew is always kind of a mixed bag, because you have no idea what they're running. A lot of them have been running Surf with Wild Charge lately, but this one's actually running Dragon Claw. Either way, kind of have to shield it, because you don't really know what it is. I was expecting potentially a Surf. But most don't really run Overheat anymore, so I'm going to let this Charge move go now that I know it's a Wild Charge. And then I'm going to shield the second Wild Charge, because that would definitely do a bunch of damage. I'm going to go straight for the Foul Play right here, because I know I can't get to another Charge move in time. It's going to do a lot of damage. And then I am going to let this Charge move go through. I should be able to kind of Fire Spin and bring it kind of low on health. Yeah, so was able to land a Bone Club at least, and then now I'm going to just get a slight Bullet Seed advantage right here. So I now know that the Mew has really not much play against this Ferrothorn based off its movesets, and then luckily they actually are running Azumarill, so now what I'm going to do is charge up to 2 Power Whips. And as you can see, the Wild Charge is not going to be enough, and now I'm going to drop the second Wild Charge second Power Whip right away on the Azumarill and take it out. So yeah, so Mew can be a mixed bag, but usually Mew is not big of a threat to the Double Grass at least. Against Alolan Marowak, it can be kind of a nuisance, so something to watch out for. Alright, so Sableye. Sableye, in those situations, I actually swap in my Ferrothorn instead, and the main reason is because Shiftry has a way better matchup against Sableye than Ferrothorn, so you know that they're probably going to counter switch, so I swap out there. And then I'm not going to shield this Mud Bomb from the Toxicroak just because I need to save my shields for the Shiftry. And then I think I'm going to try to land Shadow Ball. Unfortunately, they actually go straight away and drop their charge move. So now we're at 2 shields apiece against a Sableye and something in the back. And I'm going to shield this first move in case it's like a Power Gem or something. And then I'm going to drop these Leaf Blades. And so they actually shield. So if they shield, that makes me think that they're really weak to Shiftry in the back, and unfortunately it's actually a Azumarill, so that actually is a very good spot for me to be in. Now I could potentially force out their last shield, and they actually let it go. Wow, they actually survived the second Leaf Blade, so it's probably a very high rank Azumarill. But now I just need to get to 2 Leaf Blades against the Sableye to take it out. I do charge up to a second one and just go straight back to back Leaf Blades. So that's probably really close, because I think they're pretty close to Foul Play, but it's kind of how you play out that matchup. Alright, Alolan Marowak lead. I'd actually run into a lot that were running Fire Spin and Bone Club, but this one's actually running Hex. So Hex is actually kind of annoying because they get to the Shadow Balls faster, and they're actually running Bone Club Hex, which is very odd. Usually they're running, Fire Blast. So I'm just going to let this one go because I don't really want to commit both shields. And now that I see that it's Shadow Ball and Bone Club, oh man, this Shiftry's going to have a heyday against this Alolan Marowak, because you're going to resist everything they throw at you, and you can just farm up a ton of energy. So I have Zweilous on the screen because, spoiler alert, this is Zweilous in the back. I do kind of undercharge that one a little bit, and then so Zweilous actually kind of rough against this entire line. Even Ferrothorn struggles against it because you need to land a Flash Cannon. Everything else is resisted damage. Yeah, I think that, and besides Bone Club, which is a terrible move, it's just Flash Cannon Bone Club that could hit Zweilous or anything that's not resisted. Everything else this Zweilous resists. Fortunately, you don't see too much of it in Go Battle League. So they're going to land the Dark Pulse, and then they bring in a Azumarill right here. I'm just going to go straight back to back Power Whips to take out the Azumarill, and then I'm going to bring in my Shiftry to kind of finish off the Zweilous. Yeah, it's going to be very tough though, very, very close. Zweilous luckily is a little bit glassier, and then luckily I just get to another Leaf Blade. I actually battled this trainer recently as well on a second rematch. Unfortunately, I didn't remember their username, so I didn't play as well, and they end up winning that one. But yeah, if you do run to Zweilous, you just need to kind of muscle through a lot of resistant matchups. Alright, so going against one of my patrons, Rankar. He's actually using my Blastoise, Deoxys Defense, and Bastiodon line, which is actually a very hard counter to this line, unfortunately. Yeah, it's going to be a tough matchup. And he actually knew my line beforehand because I shared this line with my patrons a few days earlier. So he was aware of exactly what I was doing, and which puts me definitely at a disadvantage, but even if he didn't know, I think he'd be in a very good spot. So I am going to drop the Shadow Ball, mainly because I don't really anticipate my Ferrothorn being able to match up with the Blastoise very easily. So I'm just going to get that damage in as much as I can. And then now I just need to, I'm going to have to shield this Bastiodon, but Bastiodon should be able to get to 2 flamethrowers before I can take it out with Power Whips. So he's going to throw the first one. I need pretty much 2 Power Whips from here to take it out. So I'm trying to get to 2. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to. I didn't throw the first one because I knew it wasn't going to be enough. And then, at this point, just Water Gun me down. Hydro Cannon, that'll take me out. So if you do run into my old Bastiodon or Blastoise line, you're going to be in a little bit of trouble. Fortunately, that line isn't nearly as popular as it was last season, so you might not run into it too much. All right. So Shiftry leads. A lot of Shiftrys like to bait the Alolan Marowak, probably myself included, but you just don't really want to take the risk of taking that foul play. So I do go for a swap right here into my own Shiftry, and luckily I was able to catch a foul play. And the reason behind this is, again, you want to draw out any big threats to the rest of your line. So if they had a Skarmory, they probably would have brought it out. Fortunately, it's actually just a Deoxys Defense. But even Deoxys Defense, you want to get rid of as soon as you can so that you don't have to mash it up with Ferrothorn. But because of the situation I'm in right now, I am going to match up my Ferrothorn against this Deoxys Defense because Alolan Marowak has a much better matchup against Shiftry than Ferrothorn does. Alright, so they're probably going to bring in, I'm expecting probably Shiftry. So I'm going to bring in my Alolan Marowak, and then actually it's a Registeel in the back, so this actually puts me in a very good spot. yeah, I don't know. I guess they didn't want to get farmed down because either way, there's not too much play. But they're probably going to try to whittle me down as much as they can with this Registeel. And then at this point, I'm going to just charge with another Bone Club just in case they go for shield. And they do shield the second Bone Club, and then I should be able to just fast move it down with a Bullet Seed. Yep, and take it out. So yeah, Shiftry's not too big of a deal. Abomasnow lead, really great for this team. I haven't seen too many Abomasnows. I feel like the hype for Abomasnow has kind of died off a little bit. But again, if they bring in Deoxys Defense, you kind of want to stay in for a little bit and take out at least one shield or try to take out the Deoxys Defense. So let's see if they shield or not. They do shield. And then so at this point, I'm going to bring in my Shiftry. I don't shield, or actually, I guess I do shield here. And I just go for another Shadow Ball, see if they go for it or not. And they do end up letting it go. And then so now they have a shield advantage, but they still have the Abomasnow on the back. They have a Azumarill, so I'm going to pivot to my Shiftry and then just drop the Foul Play. So obviously Shiftry loses to Abomasnow, but I really want that Ferrothorn to be matched up against Azumarill. So this will ensure that I still get my Alolan Marowak sometime with the Abomasnow, and then I still have Ferrothorn in the back, and I could tank any of these charge moves and be okay. Unless they're running like, I don't know, like Outrage or something, but that's kind of uncommon. Alright, so again, I'm going to drop a Shadow Ball. If they don't shield, that's great. If they do shield, that's fine too. Either way, I need 2 Power Whips to take it out, or 1 Shadow Ball and a Power Whip, so it doesn't really matter if my opponent shields or not. I just need 2 Power Whips at this point, and I could get to them before they could get to their last Ice Beam. And take them out right there. So yeah, Abomasnow, definitely not an issue, really, in the current meta against this line. Alright, Lapras. Shadow Lapras. Ooh, really rough. Fortunately, you are resisting the Ice Shard damage, and although Ferrothorn is probably the best answer to the Shadow Lapras, I actually swap it in because I'm hoping to whittle down shield so that I can land Leaf Blades with Shiftry later. If I bring in Shiftry into Shadow Lapras, they could potentially just Ice Shard me down, and that'll be a very bad spot for my Shiftry to be in. So unfortunately, I lose my best counter right off the bat to Hypno, and then I'm going to try to land. I was going to think about landing Leaf Blade. Oh man, it's a Fortress. This is going to do a ton of damage, especially against a Shadow Shiftry. So this is a very bad spot for me to be in. I know all these are going to be Surfs though, so really no bait game here, but I'm going to go and bait myself because I really need to bait one of these shields at least with Bone Club. So they do shield it. I'm going to have to shield again. Yeah, just watching this game, I don't really know how it's possible to win this. So I'm going to go for a Shadow Ball. They do shield that again. So now I am in trouble for sure because this Surf is going to do a ton of damage, and then I go for a quick swap. Fortunately, I actually was able to get to a Foul Play to take out this Ferrothorn, Fortress. And I just need to get that one Shadow Ball, and somehow I managed to get to it. That Fire typing is going to resist the Ice Shard damage, so, but I think 99% of the time you'll probably lose that matchup. Fortunately, there's not really many Lapras leads. I think that was the only one I really ran into. So, but yeah, with Fortress in the back too, like I don't know, very odd line that you probably won't run into, but just in case you do. Okay, so my opponent right here has Swampert. They do end up shielding the first one, and then they let the Foul Play go, and then they force them to drop another shield. I'm going to just tank this charge move because I know it's not going to be able to take me out. And then I quickly get ready to swap because I know the Swampert's going to come in. And I'm just hoping something weak to Ferrothorn in the back. They kind of charged up quickly, so I knew that this is going to be a Hydro Cannon. But either way, the charge moves from Swampert are not that big of a deal. And fortunately, it's actually Meganium, so all I need to do is shield an Earthquake. So I am going to shield right here. And if it is unfortunately, it's a Frenzy Plant, so because of that, I'm going to drop the Flash Cannon right away. If it was an Earthquake, I'd probably farm up a little extra for the Swampert. So 1 Power Whip would be enough. I was mainly worried if it had Earthquake, but I don't think it does. So I think they made the right decision of not going Sludge Wave because I think they would still need a second charge move to take me out. So 2 Hydro Cannons would have been better. But fortunately, I was able to get to my Power Whip in time. Alright, Lanturn. Also a very uncommon lead, but something you might see. And so I am getting hard counter right here by Tropius. However, at this point, I know I need a win switch advantage or just hope they have something else weak to Ferrothorn on the back. And again, just like Skarmory earlier in the video, if if you don't shield the foul plays, you get snarled down. And so they're getting snarled down right here. Obviously, if they're running the Air Slash variant, it's actually, it doesn't matter as much. But they're running Razor Leaf variant, which means that I kind of saw a window of opportunity to flip the matchup. And they actually brought in their Lanturn, which is very odd in my opinion. And then I'm seeing what they brought in afterward. And so it kind of makes sense that it's going to be a Toxicroak. But now this Toxicroak is completely locked into my Alolan Marowak, which is very good for my line. And then I'm going to just drop the Bone Club after a little bit more farm. They shield, and then I had the second Bone Club ready, and so I'm able to kind of take it out. And they double shield actually. So I'm going to shield right here, mainly because I don't really need a shield for my Ferrothorn against Lanturn. So they do land a Thunderbolt, but at this point I can just charge with 2 Power Whips and take out the Lanturn and the Toxicroak. So I think I'm just committed to farming down at this point, and then they can see the match right there. All right, very last match. Whew, it's been a journey. All right, going against For the Battles, very great battler. Unfortunately, this line of hers is very tough to handle my line, just because Alolan Marowak does pretty well against Dewgong. And then Shiftry does very well against Sableye. You definitely have to watch out for the return though, especially if you're running into a purified Sableye, because you can't survive that. And so I do shield it, farm up a little extra energy, and now I'm going to drop Leaf Blades. And so these Leaf Blades, she's probably going to eventually have to shield, because they do quite a bit of damage. I could kind of recoup that shield loss right there. And then going to land another one, and then they're going to be within, I could pretty much just Fire Spin her down at this point. And so I'm going to let this first one go, even if it's a Water Pulse. It is going to be a Water Pulse, but I know I can survive it. And then they bring in Azu. Fortunately, Azu doesn't do well against Ferrothorn at all, as we saw. And then Ferrothorn does really great against Dewgong as well, too. So, yeah, I know that I'm going to be in a very good spot at this point. And then, so she does choose to shield as well. So now she's going to be, it's going to put me in a pretty good spot anyway. And then just going to go for the second Power Whip, and I probably could just straight Fire Spin down the Dewgong after, so that's why I'm going for a quick swap right there. And then just go straight for the Shadow Ball just to be safe and take out the Dewgong. So yeah, Dewgong leads, definitely not an issue for this team. So if you made it all the way to the end of this video, props to you. Thank you for joining along this journey. This team has been a ton of fun for me to play, but obviously there's a lot of different elements for the different matchups that you have to keep in mind of. So hopefully this video can illustrate a lot of them. I didn't cover every single possible matchup, but hopefully I covered enough. And yeah, this is the new Double Grass 2.0, especially in this meta. I think it's much better than the previous Double Grass. A big shout out and thank you to all my patrons who've been supporting my content creation. A few of my higher tiers and my Patreon does release these lines ahead of time, so you get a chance to use it before I release videos on it. There's only a few spots left though for those limited tiers, so be sure to sign up as soon as possible if you're interested. I'll put the links down below. If you like this video, feel free to give it a like and share. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell to find out right when I drop a new line, and I'll see y'all next time.